morning and welcome to Sembang Ilmu Series, Asatizah Berwarisan lecture. Dear expected guests, a very warm welcome and thank you for being here with us on this lovely morning Saturday for this Sembang Ilmu Series, Asatizah Berwarisan lecture. My name is Nazatul Shima and I represent Masjid Sultan as the co-organizer of this event. All right. Today marks the 11th SIS series and the second Asatizah Berwarisan lecture this year. Today marks the inaugural Asatizah Berwarisan session, Turath, Warisan Keagamaan dan Keilmuan Islam di Alam Melayu was held on 18 March at Masjid Sultan. This year, the Malay Heritage Foundation, together with Masjid Sultan, plans to organize 4 sessions to introduce heritage targeting the Asatizah group and the general public. We would like to thank all participants for their continued support of this series. A special shout out to Wisma Geylang Serai for supporting today's session too. All right, for your information, Dr. Muhammad Kusari, the co-organizer and the mosque manager of Masjid Sultan, is unable to attend today's session due to unforeseen circumstances. Nevertheless, we shall proceed. And now, allow me to introduce the moderator for today's session, Asatizah Berwarisan, the Evolution of Islamic Education, Dr. Tuty Raihanah Mostarom. Dr. Tuty is the research coordinator and fellow for the research program in the study of Muslim communities of success at the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore. She is also a lecturer and curriculum developer for the postgraduate certificate in Islam in contemporary studies in contemporary societies. Dr. Tuty completed her PhD in religious studies at the King's College London. She holds a Master of Science in International Relations from the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, National Technological University. Dr. Tuty previously graduated from the National University of Singapore, majoring in political science. She has spoken at multiple conferences and seminars, locally and internationally, and taught in various institutions in Singapore, London, and France, including at the King's College London, Sciences Po Paris, and the French Institute for International and Strategic Affairs. Her research interests include the study of Muslim minority communities in plural societies, the roles of Islamic religious leadership, and Islam in Southeast Asia. Let me invite Dr. Tuty, who will moderate the Q&A segment later, to start the SIS session and introduce our panels for today. Over to you, Dr. Tuty.
So we shall move the stairs over. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good morning to everyone here. Really happy to see all of you, some familiar faces. Thank you and apologies again for the delay. We would like to, so we shall not waste any more time. Just going to jump straight into the synopsis for this talk today and why you're here. So Islamic education is an important aspect that shapes its believers' knowledge and identity, and at the same time ensures the continuity of the religion. A good school and a great scholar have an immense influence over the students in terms of learning, style, and education content, and will have a great impact in shaping a person's knowledge, mindset, attitude, and values, either at a personal level or at an institutional level. This session will be discussing the evolution of Islamic education from the early days of Singapore up until the current modern technology era, which has contributed to the current state of believers. Right, so I have literally just read out the synopsis, which I hope had attracted you to be here today. But I also would like to highlight that let's try to depart from the formalities, because I understand that the bosses are not here. And we want to really learn and make best of our time this morning and really get a discussion going as to how the evolution of Islamic education is something that is wanted and needed for the contemporary society, especially when socio-religious issues are getting more and more challenging. And we require religious leadership that is critical, engaging, and is able to really be in there collaboratively to advise and to guide the Muslim community and at the national level as well as internationally. And for that, I'm really excited. When we talk about collaboration, I would like to declare that I am, as per the presentation by the MC this morning, I am not from a religious background, but I'm really excited again, as per every time I go for PCICS classes, to really collaborate and mix the knowledge and the expertise in that classroom, right? So here we have Ustaz Manaf here, who is very, very senior, and he'll be able to give us advice, and also everyone else in the room, where we have religious graduates, as well as somebody who's obviously not from the religious sciences, but really excited to be here and collaborate. We have an outstanding panel of young speakers. So we will be starting off with Ustazah Bushra. And Ustazah Bushra she received her formal Islamic education from Jordan and Madrasah Al-Junid Al-Islamiyah in Singapore before pursuing her tertiary education at Al-Azhar University. She graduated with a bachelor's in Islamic theology, majoring in hadith. Okay, I shall not go further. I'm sure you've read the synopsis, but just wanted to highlight whereby we have Ustazah Bushra, but we also have others who graduated from the religious studies for at least 12 years in terms of background, but they had different trajectories. So we would like to listen first from Ustazah Bushra. I would like to invite her up on stage. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. So, alhamdulillah, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. I would like to thank Dr. Tuty and all the fellow panelists, inshallah, for today, and for all the attendees. This would be, I think, my first time talking about an issue, or I wouldn't say an issue, or a topic that is not other, that is a little bit out of my area of expertise, which is religious knowledge, I would say. As Dr. Tuty mentioned, 12 years of formal Islamic education. Therefore, I speak, I would say literally, I speak theology. That's my area. And I major in hadith. Therefore, it becomes, Quran and hadith. That's the area that I speak of, or I speak about most of the time. So about today's presentation, I have a very short, I think, time to speak. And inshallah, I'll try to go a little bit about the history of Islamic education in Singapore and also da'wah. I'll just go very quickly, maybe to the next slide, please. Okay, I'll just touch a little bit on how everything started after the independence of Singapore. I'll not go further than that because it's very detailed, and then it will take a lot of time. I'll discuss about the state of Islamic education after the independence, and I'll also discuss a little bit about the madrasas, maybe about more of the 6 madrasas, and the formation of Kumpulan Saudara Baru, which is where I would maybe explain a little bit why I wanted to touch about the Kumpulan Saudara Baru. It is because it is about or around that time where da'wah actually started in Singapore. Before that, it was done in a very subtle manner. There is no proper channel where da'is come together, they get training and stuff like that. And then I will also go about the involvement of Islamic education, which is the beginning of integration, where secular subjects, academic subjects was included in the curriculum, and national exams was introduced to madrasa students around that time. And then to the third point, where the quality enhancement, where MUIS actually look into developing the skills of asatizahs, of future da'is. And then at the very end, I will maybe touch a little bit about how do we move forward as a Muslim community in terms of integration, in terms of contributing to our society at large. Next slide, please. Next. Okay, so initially, there are 3 points here that I would like to maybe point out. This is not a history lesson, but it will sound a little bit like history, but do bear with me that there will not be dates and stuff like that, because that's not my area. But around the independence, at the time of independence, Singapore independence, there were so many madrasas, around 26 madrasas at that time, and they were known as religious school Arabic or Arabic religious school. And the reason why they were known as Arabic religious school is because the medium of teaching around that time was mostly in Arabic. So to be a madrasa student or a religious student, you need to be able to understand, comprehend, memorize, read, write Arabic. And the method of teaching is really very pondok method. I'm not saying this in a negative manner. I'm saying that this has the pros and the cons of it. So as we know, the pondok teaching method is a lot of memorizing. You need to memorize and be able to have that strength of memory. So for a person with memory, good memory and comprehension, it will be an easy thing for them. And they would excel, and you would see da'is and scholars who are like books. They are encyclopedias of the religion, but you would also see some who have learned years and years, but they are not able to contribute because they have absolutely no understanding of what they have learned. Yeah, okay, and that's what. And from the 26 schools, there was about 4,000 students, more than 4,000 students. 4,000 students is, I think, a big number, I would say, at that time. For people, imagine 4,000 students who are learning 100% in Arabic, or maybe 90% in Arabic and a little bit of Malay. These students, these 4,000, unfortunately, 95% of them were females. There's not much male student, until there were reports saying that out of the 15 students that go to Al-Azhar during that time, only one is a male. That's very little, yeah? And that raised a question on why. Is it the quality, or is it like the madrasa students have nowhere to go, or have nowhere to, or no way to survive in the fast-moving Singapore? Okay? And then shortly after the independence came AMLA, okay? And AMLA was passed. The Administration of Muslim Law Act was passed, and all madrasas came under the purview of MUIS. Okay, and it was easy. It would be easier that way, because then there was one religious body handling all the religious school under it. It will create, some sort of standardization. Okay, standardization, and it will also maybe, look into the areas where it needs to increase in value or decrease in certain area. Integration becomes something that is, something that would happen soon. So the moment MUIS took over, several reforms started to happen in the madrasa education system, or the Islamic education. So instead of looking at it as Islamic education only, where a person learns the Quran, learns the scriptures, learn the hadith, memorize and understand how to apply it maybe in their daily life, MUIS wanted something that is a little bit bigger. And I think at that time, the people who were handling this understood the true meaning of Islamic education. Because Islamic education, and I would like to emphasize this again and again and again, that Islamic education is not limited to Islam. Islamic education should have Islam in it, yet Islamic education is education. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran about education, talabul ilm, or ilma, Allah did not say ilmuddin. Of course, ilmuddin comes as something, or religious knowledge comes as something that is a necessity. Every single Muslim individual should have religious knowledge, or be equipped with religious knowledge for their own self first. And maybe, if they want to further look into the religious knowledge, that's a good thing, but to seek knowledge as a whole is something that is wajib, or compulsory. And then it was around that time that Madrasa Al-Junaid, after 39 years of its formation, started to include languages and subjects like English, mathematics, science. And it was around that time that the Madrasa Ma'arif and Madrasa Al-Junaid started to send their students to take O-level, and Madrasa Al-Ma'arif actually sent their students to take A-level as private candidates. And Madrasa Al-Ma'arif at that time did not have to include the subjects, because they have already used mediums like Malay and English before. So Madrasa Al-Ma'arif was already up there, I think, in terms of integration, because of Sheikh Muhammad Fadlullah Sahimi. Okay, and then, okay, let's move to the next part. Okay, a little bit maybe just about da'wah. Converts at that time were studying at Madrasa Al-Sagaf. They had to study in normal madrasas, and they have to learn Arabic and they have to learn Malay. It was known at that time that everybody who converts to Islam kind of masuk Melayu. You understand? Because there's absolutely no way for you to learn the religion without knowing at least Malay, or maybe Arabic, Malay, or maybe even Tamil because of the traders at that time. So they had this idea, maybe we should form a place for us, where we can teach or learn and speak in English and be comfortable. So they started this group called Kumpulan Saudara Baru, and it was endorsed by MUIS at that time, and it was agreed, and they were called, you see, even though they wanted an English-speaking group, they were called the Kumpulan Saudara Baru. Okay, and they were given by MUIS the place in Penge Avenue, a house, and it was called Rumah Saudara Baru, or as they themselves called it, Muslim Converts Home. And under the leadership of their president at that time, or the appointed chairman at that time, was Brother Rizwan Wu. The group of people decided to actually register this Muslim Converts Association under the registration of society. Therefore, they become an entity of their own, and they could, do what is best for them and decide it internally. MUIS Converts Association of Singapore then was formed, and later it became a da'wah hub. And this is why I'm mentioning it. It becomes a da'wah hub, a place where da'is actually came out from and were trained. Okay. After that, let's move to the next slide, maybe in the next two slides. Yeah. So when MUIS gained control, and around the 90s, MUIS started to integrate, subjects like mathematics, English, and students of madrasah were sent for national examinations. People started to enroll, or more male students start to enroll. So the initial problem where there were so many female students and no male students were no longer a problem. Instead, now the problem, or the new issue that came up, is that the enrollment for madrasah was so high. They had a very high enrollment. They have doubled the enrollment per year, yet the number of applicants still doubles that. Therefore, there are so many. The demand for madrasah education come. And this brings us to think, there is something there. Until today, if you were to look into the number of applicants for madrasah, it's always so high. It's very high. And I think about 50% do not get to enter madrasas because of that high demand of that education. And it brings us to the question where there is something there. The madrasas are providing something that people are looking for. And I think as a parent myself, I wanted my son to enter madrasah. And the MET now, madrasah entrance test, is very difficult. We trained together, and we were a team, and we trained for about 2 years like crazy. It was like, as though I was like thinking, I did not study for my O-levels this hard. But yes, we studied really hard, and he was about 4.5 years at that time. And during his K2 examinations, during his K2, I think the first term of K2, he had to sit for the examination. And I remember we were like, Ya Allah, praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he gets to enter the madrasah. And it brings us to that question, and maybe we can address it later. So what did MUIS do at that time? The centralized curriculum for all madrasas. At that time, I think maybe those who are around my time, and I'm about to give away this thing, my age, there was PSTE. I think for the younger ones, Brother Shafiq, Sister Shafiqah, you have not heard of this even. Okay? So PSTE, Peperiksaan Sijil Thanawi 4. It sounds very Malaysian right now when I'm saying it. It doesn't sound MUIS at all. But yes, look how far we have come. Subhanallah. So there's this Peperiksaan Sijil Thanawi 4, where at secondary 4, we are tested on all our Arabic subjects. And the exam is standardized for all 6 madrasas. And it depends on you will get Mumtaz or Jayyid Jiddan or something like that. And I think at that time they did mention that you need to surpass, like every madrasa need to surpass like a certain benchmark to say or to prove that their students have learned and have followed the curriculum or are on track. I'm not sure. Yeah, but it was a lot of pressure. It was very difficult because it was around that time that we are taking our O-levels, right? So yes, that was, I hope it doesn't happen again. Yeah, and then the curriculum was revamped to include initiatives from the Ministry of Education. So at that time, yeah, everything became more, national. Some were acceptable of it, some was not. In our madrasa, I was in Madrasa Al-Junaid, because 70% of our subjects are still in Arabic and 30% in English. I remember there were a lot of clash, and it was a bit difficult. So if you want to take science and everything, you had to study after hours, and by different teachers that they call in for those who want to stay. So you will have to stay after beyond 4 p.m. So you'll study from 4 to 6 for science and stuff like that. And you have to come on the weekends. And then National Madrasa Education Blueprint was also introduced in early 2000 to inculcate a sense of national identity. Okay, maybe we can move to the next one. These are all the notable figures. There are many more. I'm just choosing these 3. Number 1 is Sheikh Muhammad Fadlullah Suhaimi, who I think had a reformist mind. That's why I'm mentioning him. And the second picture is Ustaz Sayyid Abdullah Al-Jufri, my mudir, of Madrasa Al-Junaid. I look really highly at him. He was one of those who was against that early reformation. He didn't want the madrasa education to be changed or the primary school to be, the Compulsory Education Act to happen. He was against it. But I have an explanation for that. And I think I understand his point of view at that time. And I think he did well. He did good. Okay, he is the author of IRK, Islamic Religious Knowledge textbook, which is still used until today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of them. And then Brother Rizwan Wu, I think when we talk about da'is, we must mention Brother Rizwan Wu. He is one of that person who actually came up with that idea of MCAS being a one hub, a stop center, I would say, for people to convert, learn, gain support, socialize, get everything that they need in English language. They were amongst the people who actually created the English, or started with the English Islamic lectures, which was well received at that time. Okay, moving to the next. Okay, no, next 2 slides. Yeah. Okay, so what MUIS did in the 2000s, I think onwards, the late 2000s, or I think early 2000 onwards until today, is that it keeps on increasing or refining the quality of asatizahs and da'is that come out with Islamic education certificate. It's not enough that you have a certificate from Al-Azhar, but you now are receiving professional education or professional training in order for you to be ready to face the community and to face the needs of the community. Therefore, things like in the initial stage, every single asatizah in the madrasa receive proper training or professional training from NIE. Therefore, they are NIE certified. It's considered, I think, it's a different type of certificate, but they are professionally certified. And then the ERS came in when the issue of September 11, the issue of JI came out, and there were so many issues of, terrorism, extremism thoughts and stuff like that. And MUIS wanted to control this in a country where Muslims are minorities, and to have such extreme thoughts is considered very detrimental to the Muslim community that are learning Islam. Therefore, ERS was formed. And then the PCICS as the next step. And then I think about that time where MUIS and Muslim SG came up with this group of asatizah called the Asatizah Youth Network, where a group of tech-savvy, very friendly asatizahs were given that, a role to, helm the religious knowledge in such a beautiful manner that they are so approachable by the community, and they don't look scary, and they don't look like they are on a pedestal. No, they are you and me. Like, we can communicate, and we are open-minded, and we can speak your language. Moving on to the very last point, I would like to say, next slide maybe. Yes. Is number 1, we have to shift our mentality as an individual. It's not enough that the community or MUIS or the madrasa are providing these things. It is the shift in mentality that is needed in every single Muslim individual. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, "Khairun nasi anfa'uhum linnas." The best of people are those who are the most beneficial to others, and it's not beneficial to Muslims, but beneficial to others. Knowledge is everything from understanding the Quran, to literature, to science, mathematics, to medicine, to social sciences, to psychology, to economics, etc. We, as a Muslim, we must understand that we shoulder double responsibility than other people. Number one is our responsibility towards our Lord and towards our religion, and then number two, our responsibility towards the community at large, regardless of their religion and race. It is, and that, okay, whatever it is that we want, and that shift in mindset requires knowledge, and to instill that need of knowledge and that importance of knowledge into our kids and into ourselves again and again. To make them understand, to make our kids understand from a very young age that without knowledge, you can't go, you can't help, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? Okay, okay, and let's look back to the people of our, previous times, Muslim scholars of the previous times who were known for the contribution to science, to medicine, to astronomy, to literature, yet they are very grounded in their religion too. That means they know where they stand. They are Muslims, proud Muslim scientists, proud Muslim astronomer, proud Muslim, architect, and something like that. I would like to just maybe touch one or two people that I feel very inspired with in today's world. Some of them are Singaporean, some are not. Number one, I would like to mention, I think I'm just going to speak about the Singaporean, okay? Dr. Rafi Rashid, this person is somebody that I know personally. I meet him almost, I think, every week in MCAS. Dr. Rafi Rashid is an interdisciplinary scientist and an expert in microbiology. He's a lecturer at MUIS, that's his day job, in Integrative Sciences and Engineering Program, ISEP. And the most important thing and the most interesting thing about Dr. Rafi Rashid is he is an ARS certified Asatizah. He spent his weekends in MCAS teaching Islam to non-Muslims. He teaches the Knowing Islam sessions, and where he meet with every different background Muslim, non-Muslim who just want to know about Islam. He can sit and discuss fully because he has that science background and he can also integrate it, or bring it together with Islam. I will also mention one more name, which I think maybe some of us know, Ustaz Irwan Hadi, who recently passed his bar. He is the Deputy Director of Office of the Mufti and Religious Policy and Regulation in MUIS. At the same time, he has recently just passed the bar as an advocate and a solicitor. So for me, it's like that. These things are things that are very important. A Muslim, a person or a student of knowledge of Islam and Islamic education should be seen as something that would inspire you to want to contribute back to the community at large. And I think, inshallah, with that, it was always mentioned that the Muslim community cannot be integrated, and it's very difficult to integrate the Muslim community in the society, in the Singaporean society. But as it is, once we change our mindset, inshallah, and open up our mind that knowledge is everything, and we look into increasing and improving ourselves, maybe perhaps only then will we be integrated in the community as a contributing member of the society. Inshallah, with that, wabillahi tawfiq wal hidayah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ustazah, for that very insightful sharing. And I found it really refreshing because we actually start off with a historical perspective in understanding. For me, this is something new, to actually look at Islamic education, da'wah, from a historical perspective and how it has developed. So how da'wah has developed in Singapore in the past, in parallel to what she has provided is the evolution of Islamic education, which is what we are focusing on. Okay, I think the key point here we want to touch on and to really like hold on to as we move towards the Q&A later is that shift in mentality that is required, and also the fact that it's not sufficient to wait for movement at the institutional level, that the initiative has to be proactive and coming from the community collaboratively, right? And also, I really love that when she cited of how individuals should be beneficial to others in general. That's something I hold close to my heart. And also that interdisciplinary approach that is necessary, right? And on that point, she also highlighted how mentorship and inspiring individuals whose knowledge, mindset, and attitudes we wish to emulate, we should have such individuals who inspire us, right, for us to actually move forward. And on that note, we shall move on to Brother Shafiq. Brother Shafiq will go into in-depth from the Turkish experience. Brother Shafiq, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. First of all, I would like to say thank you so much on behalf of Masjid Sultan for organizing this event and Wisma Geylang Serai for supporting this event. I'm very glad to be with all of you on Saturday morning. It's good to be spending time with family, but alhamdulillah, we're going to share our experience together, and also it's good to know familiar faces here, like Brother Shari is here, alhamdulillah. And actually, I would like to, I'm quite nervous actually, in which the first time I saw Dr. Tuty was 6 years ago. Just now, Ustazah Bushra mentioned about PCICS. Before that, it was known as CITC. I joined, it was during the time of CITC, but I didn't continue it for some other reason. But yeah, it just felt like yesterday where I met with Dr. Tuty. Yeah, it felt good. But before I start discussing on this issue, it took me 2 weeks to prepare these slides because the title itself. The title is Islamic Education. Because in Turkey we don't separate things there's no dichotomy between secular or Islamic. Because I still remember during that time when I did my research on Ottoman Empire and Ottoman history and with regards to the Singapore relations, my professor did ask me, do you think Ottoman history is an Islamic history? Then it just stops me. Then he asked me again questions. If today Khawarizmi, the scholars, or Avicenna, Ibn Sina, were to be here and they are the greatest scientists or mathematicians, do you think that they will call their research as Islamic mathematics? No, they don't call them. And if you look back, and I'm from the historical background, if you look back at the Islamic history resources, the earliest, like Tabari, they never mention about Islamic history. They call it Ayyamul Arab or Tarikhut Tabari. So that's the shift of mindset we need, where we mustn't have separation between secular or Islam, this is non-Islam. It should be, we need to look the world in a more, we call it holistic way, where Islam doesn't mean only Quran and Hadith, just like Ustaz Bushra has mentioned earlier. Islam is beyond that. Quran, Hadith is a religious sciences. It's not Islamic education. Islamic education is not only Hadith. Because if you were to say Islamic education, can I say this is secular education? So what's the definition of secular education then? Because Islamic education really emphasizes on critical thinking, really emphasizes on research. But now, unfortunately, when it comes to Islamic education, we only confine them according to hadith, tafsir, usul, and it's not like that, actually. So that's the reason it took me 2 weeks to understand Islamic education when I prepared this slide. So, when it comes, because for me, I really like to learn history, and I really want all of us to really learn what we can learn from history, and also what we can, how we can move further, actually. So we can learn from Ahmad Atullah Effendi. I think, so let me give a short, next slide, please. Okay, so Ahmad Atullah Effendi, he's a very interesting figure, in which his father is a Qadi, Abu Bakr Effendi. And he's from the Hanafi Mazhab. So during that time, his father, Abu Bakr Effendi, was sent to South Africa under the request of the British Queen to solve religious issues which happened in South Africa. Because during that time, there was a clash between Shafi'i Mazhab and Hanafi Mazhab in South Africa. So, from his background, we could see that he studied the Hanafi jurisprudence from his father. At the same time, he studied the Shafi'i jurisprudence from Tuan Guru. I think next slide, please. Yeah. So he studied the Shafi'i Mazhab from Tuan Guru Abdullah Qadi Abdul Salam. So who is Tuan Guru Abdullah Qadi Abdul Salam? He is an Indonesian. He was being expelled from Makassar, somewhere in Makassar, to South Africa. And he has, Atullah Effendi, learned from those scholars of his father, Abu Bakr Effendi, and Tuan Guru. So, and with his background, his mother is a British. So he got a diverse background on religious as well as multicultural family background. Because of this, he was being appointed as the Ottoman Consul General in Singapore. Because let me ask you something. Out of millions of civil servants in the Ottoman era, don't you think that the Ottoman Sultan choose randomly the officials? Of course, no. They need to look at their background to make it, and I will always repeat this, to contextualize the events in the country. So what happened is, if you look his activities in Singapore, if we look at his activities in Singapore, although during that time the Ottoman Sultanate or the Ottoman Empire was propagating on pan-Islamism, the rise of to support the caliphate, his activities in Singapore is not that actually. He focused on unity among different races. He focused, and his activities, he went to visit the Arab societies, Malay society, Chinese society, and you can look at from the last, can you show me the last slide, please? Last slide? Okay, so from his activities in Singapore, we can really see that he really understands the context of Singapore. And he was the first one, during that time, Hajj pilgrimage, there was no passport. People from Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, who wants to travel to Mecca, they don't need passport. But he was the one who started to implement passport. Why is it important? Now we don't find important of this passport, right? But during that time, people died during Hajj. And to track them, to track the identity, he implement passport. And this is the maslahah, or the fiqh, they call it maslahah, isn't it, Ustazah? Yeah, maslahah. The maslahah of that time is this, is the passport itself. So what does that mean is, he really, with his religious background, at the same time, he see the maslahah or the needs of the society, he moved forward actually. And of course, it took him like only 2 years before he passed away. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so what I could really encourage all of us is, as a Muslim society, we really need to get used to be uncomfortable. We may follow a school of thought, but at least look at other resources. Example, when I was back in Turkey, I studied theology for my undergraduates. I remember it was my 3rd year where they introduced me on this course on hadith, but from the Orientalist side. Instead of studying Bukhari and Muslim, we also studied Iqra Ghazaya. Instead of study on the first year after we studied on religious sociology, we also learned sociology. Why is it important? And instead of learning, after we learn the Islamic history, we learn the history. Because I really don't like the term Islamic history, because it really makes us understand that the world is divided. This is Islamic, this is not Islamic. There's no such thing, actually. I want to ask all of you, if 1 + 1 is 2, right? Can I say that if I were to write in Arabic numerals, can it become Islamic? It's not. And that's the thing. When it comes to in the future, what I really want from our Islamic education graduates or religious education graduates is, first, we must not only, if those who study hadith, we must not only stop at Bukhari and Muslim. We must also focus more beyond that, which is we need to study on philosophy. We need to study on sociology. And those who studied fiqh, we must also go beyond that, actually. Example, like, I still remember there's a professor in Turkey, his name is Mustafa Urstuk. He's a mufassir of tafsir. But because he studied language philosophy, he interpreted the Quran based on the language philosophy. And it really gives us a new perspective. And lastly, I would like to really encourage students to really see the world beyond theological perspective. Because, and this is going to be the end, which is, I will end with a story, which is, during that time when Fatih Sultan Mehmed, or Muhammad Sultan Al-Fatih, the conqueror of Istanbul, he already conquered Istanbul. So he had a cannon, and the length is 5 meters. The length is 5 meters, the weight is 18 tons. And he created 5 of those cannons. And when you boom the cannon, you can hear up to 23 kilometers. What does that mean? If I were to boom here, people in Jurong can hear it, actually. That's how big it is. So when he started to enter Hagia Sophia or Hagia Sophia, do you know what does the religious scholars of the Constantine were discussing? People already, your country, your society is demolishing, but the religious scholars were discussing on what is the gender of the angels. Is said in right? So that was what the religious scholars were discussing. The country, which has the empire, which has been in power for 1,238 years, before the time of Christ, till the time of Muhammad, in 1453, it was the mightiest power, and it fell on 1453. The religious scholars were discussing on what is the gender of the angel. So from this history, let us reflect on our current situation here today. And I'm pretty sure in the next 2 months, we will going to discuss on things such as Maulid, Kunut. People, how many hadiths have you memorized? We have the ChatGPT, AI. We send rockets. But then are we still going to discuss on such issues? Are we going to discuss on Maulid? Are we going to discuss on Kunut? Are we going to discuss on, usually during Ramadan, is on what breaks the fast? I don't say that it's not important, but then does it really the needs of the society we need to address today? Because we have the energy, we have the motivation to defend the religion, but the question is, does the religion, which is Islam, we are holding on, serve the community? If you look from the book of Karen Armstrong and others, religious history, a religion can die once the religion does not address the community needs. And we are responsible of this to address the community needs, actually. And we need to stay grounded. Religious scholars need to really address the needs of the society and be grounded to the reality of the world today. We can never be Malaysia. We can never be Saudi. We can never be Yemen. We can never be others. We are we. That's the sad reality of it, actually. We may know scholars like Tariq Ramadan, but are we familiar with Nur Khalis Majid? Are we familiar with scholars like Abu Qadir Fadil? Are we familiar with that? Although some of us, we may not agree with their views, but have you read their book? And that's the thing we need to address as religious scholars. And we must, as what Dr. Tuty has mentioned, we must start from the ground. And we need to work hand in hand together. And example like Hassan Hanafi, all these works of them may benefit us, although it may not, it is against our core belief, I say in inverted comma, but we need to at least look at their discussion, actually. If you look at the guys at the back, you can see Yusuf Akshura, Syed Halim Pasha, all these guys, they were thinkers of Turkish, and unfortunately, their writings are not in our language. You cannot get their writings in either Indonesia or Malay. And most of the writings from the Egypt or Azhari students, we don't translate such books. We are always busy memorizing hadith, yet we don't write that much, actually, academically, actually. And with the rise of this artificial intelligence, I would like to ask all of us, is the number of hadith or all those religious texts to memorize, is it really important today? Or is it important for us to critically argue on their ideas? And we can look that, if we look clearly, sometimes we tend to confuse between, I will not use this word, but I used like televangelists. We used to confuse between televangelists and alim. Their views, their number of viewers, subscribers, is not the determination of are they alims or are they religious scholars. Look at their writing. Really look at their writing. How many books have they written? If you look at Ibn Sina, Avicenna, he wrote a book on Futuhatul Makkiyah. It's 10 jilid, or 10 volumes. And those are the people we want. And they never do it under the pretext of Islamic philosophy, Islamic education. They just do it under the name of education. That is where we need to embark and really change our worldview, that there's no dichotomy between secular or Islam, because Islam is the message and education itself is the basis of human needs. Although the religious discourse may or may not agree to us, but at least we understand them. And I would like to end with Quran, just like Ustazah Bushra did. وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. Say the truth. Wherever it is, we need to say the truth. Although it may hurt others, we need to say the truth. I am very sorry if I may hurt all of you by this speech, but it will be a good way of for us to think together, actually. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, Brother Shafiq. Rather Ustaz Shafiq, since he's the Tasul and call me Ustazah. Yeah, so he gave us a lot of food for thought, I believe. I think most of you are ready to pounce, ready to ask questions, ready to develop on the points that he has already raised, right? So, sabar dulu ya. Okay. I think the points where, let me just reiterate the points for later. The dichotomization of knowledge. I mean, you touched a bit kind of on the Islamization of knowledge, and then how do you counter that, and the integration of knowledge as they call it right now, right? The importance of contextualization and seeing the world beyond the theological perspective. Then you mentioned AI and Hadith. What I wanted to highlight was that where do we go from here, right? We've talked about history, we talked about slightly of the present. How do we better equip our future religious leaders in an era where AI can write a khutbah for Singapore in 15 seconds, whereby my colleagues in the Office of Mufti does weeks of research or 1 or 2 weeks, and then after that they have to vet and do that. My dear AI, Dr. AI, basically apparently came out with within 15 seconds, a khutbah for Singapore, cukup dengan brothers and sisters. This is how we contextualize Islam. I am not kidding. It was quite a topic. So, in order for us to understand and how to mold our future religious leaders to be able to equip them in an era of AI, whether they can harness it or are they going to be overtaken by AI, we need to also understand where are the gaps in their development. Where were the gaps that we have to remedy, right? So for that, we shall give the floor to Sister Shafiqah to take us through her talk. Thank you.